When we try to read about early human civilization, we'll come across certain events that entirely changed the human history, and one among which is the cognitive revolution. So, cognitive revolution happened according to the historians, certain historians. Cognitive revolution occurred between 70,000 and 30,000 years. So cognitive revolution is simply when human brains became more capable of thinking. Human brains became more capable of creating things. So the expansion in human brain, the ability that human brain had, and the development that human brain had, so that's simply the cognitive revolution. And when we try to look how cognitive revolution started, intrinsically it started with the uh, development of language. It started as the language expands. In other words, it came along with the evolution of language. So now what is the special thing about language? Why is language so important? And when we try to understand language in a very basic sense, language is nothing but a way of communicating. There are different ways of communication. We use verbal communication, non-verbal communication, we use signs. And today we are so much exposed to media, so we also communicate through medias. So what is the special thing about communication? And certainly we can say that human beings are not the only species that communicates in this universe. Animals too communicate. Insects like ants and bees, they communicate. In fact, they are very much collaborative. They are very much cooperative in what they do. For an instance, you drop a sugar containing or a sweet containing uh, food on the ground. Then in the next 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour later, there will be a passerby ant that will see the food that is in the ground. And with no time, he will pass the information to his fellow gang, so his fellow ants. Then, as said, in the next 15 minutes or the 30 minutes or an hour later, you will see that he will come along with lots of ants to collect the food that is in the ground. You see, we are not certain how ants communicate, but we are sure that they do communicate. That is why they are collaborative, that is why they are cooperative to each other. So they communicate. What about parrots? Parrots are extremely wonderful. They can speak as much as human beings, you and I speak. So, in fact, parrots are very good at mimicry. So, parrots can mimic the same way Donald J. Trump speaks, or Barack Obama speaks, or Narendra Modi speaks, or sings as somebody. You see, parrots can do wonder with speaking. So that is what parrots are capable of. Now, when we look on some other animals like apes and monkeys, they use vocal signs to communicate. They use vocal signs to aware something. You see, we are taking a transition from a very common level, like we started by cognitive revolution, then we are coming to communication. So we are taking a transition over another level, that is vocal signs. So vocal signs, when we talk about vocal signs, monkeys are very good at it. In one of the experimental study, a zoologist found something very interesting. What is that? A bunch of monkeys, they they gave each other a vocal signs. So there were two vocal signs that they make. One means that there is an eagle, so be careful. So the other vocal sign means there is a lion around, so be careful. So those were the two vocal signs. So when the first vocal sign was given, all the monkeys stopped from what they were doing, and with fear they were looking around, they were looking up where the eagle is hovering. So the other time, the same bunch of monkeys, the same group of monkeys, When one monkey gave the vocal sign, which meant there is a lion around, so be careful. So when the vocal sign was produced or vocal sign was given, all the monkeys, those were in the ground, they scrambled up to the tree and they ran away. So you see, even monkeys give a very good vocal signs. In fact, they are very good at it. Now, what is the special thing about humans now? What are human beings capable of? So when we talk about human beings, we don't simply just give vocal signs. We don't simply give signs through our actions and whichever ways. We don't just give signs on what's going on. Human brains are even more capable of that. You see, we can explain what had happened in the past 2 3 days or what had happened in the past 5 6 years. As long as you remember, as long as you have a memory, you can explain whatever had happened. You can express your feelings, you can express your thoughts through verbal communication. So human beings are capable of that. And even when you try to share some complex ideas that you have, and even if the other person who is listening to you does not understand, you will definitely try to find other way to explain it better to make the person understand. And if the person does not understand again, you will try more ways to make the person understand. You will use more ideas, you will use more examples to make the person understand. You see, even complex things can be simplified, or even simplified things can human beings are capable of making into something very complex. Now, what makes me want to speak about language, or what makes me want to talk about oratory skill or public speaking skills or speaking skills in general sense? You see, who will listen to you if your speaking skills are really poor, if my speaking skills are really poor? So when we talk about oratory skills, it is not just you use a rich language, you are good at using language, your vocabularies are good, and so on, your constructions are good, you articulate well. That's not enough. When we talk about oratory skills, it goes even beyond that. In Aristotle's triangular mode of pursuit, we'll see ethos, pathos, and logos. So this, according to Aristotle, is what pursues people. Firstly, Aristotle talks about ethos. So when we look on Aristotle's way of explaining ethos, ethos is nothing but a person's credential, or if you are talking about, so right now I'm talking about rhetoric, Aristotle's rhetoric. So how well versed I am in that subject matter. Ethos is where one can convince or one can pursue others through his or her credentials. So, for an example, I'm not from the field of political science, and I've read about the art of rhetoric. So there is another person who is well versed in the field of political science and who is also a certified political scientist, let's say, and who have also read the art of rhetoric. So we both have read the art of rhetoric, so say. And if I ask you, we both read the art of rhetoric, but who would you listen to? Would you listen to me, or would you listen to the political scientist who can also explain the art of rhetoric? With certainty that a lot of people would listen to the person because he have his credential, he is well versed in his field. One thing, he is from the political science, he is from the field of political science, so he must be well versed with the work of Aristotle, so he must be sure of what rhetoric, the art of rhetoric talks about. So definitely people would listen to a person who has his credential from that very field, or a person who is well versed in the topic, in a particular subject. So you see, if you are talking about something, it's about how well versed you are in that subject. So the question is, are you capable of doing that? Or are you capable of talking about that? How well versed you are at that? So that's about ethos. Then comes pathos. So Aristotle's way of explaining pathos was simple, and it's harder than, to me it's harder than ethos and logos. Here pathos, according to Aristotle, pathos, it's something very psychological because it involves understanding human emotions, or it involves going along with other person's emotions. You see, that is why Aristotle mentions that a rhetorician should be a very good um, logician as well as psychologist. Why does he says that? Because to be a rhetorician, or to be a person who can convince others, has to be a person who also understands others' emotion, who can also control people's emotion. If you have listened to any of the late Christopher Hitchens' videos or his speeches, it's so interesting to listen to him. He always starts up with something very humorous. He starts up with something very funny. And so when he cracks jokes, the entire congregation loves, or the entire audience loves. You see, that's the way of controlling others' emotion. So people would not merely listen to you. People would not merely come and connect with your thoughts if they are not willing to listen to you. So first thing, it's a way that you have to make the person who are listening to you, or you have to make your audience be willing to listen to you. So you try to get their attention. So once they are attentive, then they will listen to you. That is why lots of good speakers would start with something very funny, something interesting. That's how his speech will become very much convincing to people who are listening. So the person would seem to be very advisable. You see, first you connect with people's emotion, and once you can control others' emotion, then your speech, or the words that you speak out, or the message that you are trying to deliver would become very much convincing. So that's another way of pursuit. So the last one, according to Aristotle's way of pursuit, is logos. Logos is nothing but logic. So it aids logic, it aids meaning. Suppose, because I watch lots of debate, Richard Dawkins or Jordan Peterson or Pinchebro, or I can keep on naming. There are lots of good debaters, and as far as I'm concerned, what I see from them as a good debaters or good public speakers is that they don't merely share their ideas, they don't merely bring out the ideas. So what they do is that they cite different facts and evidence. They bring out the books that they've read. They bring out the journals that they've referred. They bring out all their references. They bring different references. You see, that makes a person's argument very strong. That makes a person's foundation firm. So you see, when you bring facts, it brings support to what you are trying to say. Right. And so those great debaters, or those great speakers, would always bring facts, or always bring logic to support their arguments, or to make his arguments more convincing. So using facts and logic. So that is about the third thing. So as we have talked about cognitive revolution to communication, to language, to vocal science, to the art of rhetoric, and so on. So what makes me think that I want to make a video on oratory skills? You see, everybody does not possess good oratory skills. There are people who are very good at public speaking. There are very people who are expressive. So when we trace back once again on the cognitive revolution, we know that it started with the expansion of language. It started with the evolution of language. And you see, human beings became even more intelligent as their language expanded. How? What is the reason? One good reason could be As the language expands, human beings became more expressive, and in fact, lots of historians support towards the theory of gossiping. What makes the theory of gossip very much interesting? When we talk about gossiping, we always use it very negatively. We always put the word gossiping into a very negative sense. But gossiping can be applied in a very positive sense as well. You see, language expanded is the gossip about the other person. What did happen to the person today? I share what I've seen to the other person, so I gossip, whether it be a good gossip or a bad gossip. I gossip with the other person, so I share the information. So as I share one information to the other person share, and it circulates. Human beings became more expressive. So when human beings becomes more expressive and can express our thoughts and can express our feelings verbally, then we really think, because to speak about something we think, we do to say something we think. So that's about articulation. As we try to gossip, as we try to speak about the other person, pass the information, human brain also expands, reasoning expands, and that's how expansion of language also led to greater intelligence in human history. So that's about it.